So, James, Babygirl me.
Babygirl, directed by Helena Rain, who most recently did Bodies, Bodies, Bodies from 2022, which liked some bits of it, didn't love it, some of it was just a bit too much, but interesting, fun. This one's very different. It's Babygirl, starring Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, who we love. Who, spoilers, is great in this. Not spoilers for the film, just like for my own review.
Shocker.
He's really good in this. So Babygirl is a intense sexual thriller. Not thriller, intense sexual...
Drama.
Erotic drama. Sensual erotic drama. The film opens with Nicole Kidman, who is... Oh, let me just get the character's name. Hold on a second. Nicole Kidman, who plays Romy, is having sex. Well, by the way, this is a very sexual film. I will do my best for like YouTube advertising things to like keep it as PG as possible. But maybe if you listen with around young kids, you might just want to have this one for yourself. I'll try and keep it as clean as I can.
Yeah. Take yourself off and listen to the Babygirl.
Where you going, love? I'm going to go listen to James talk about Babygirl.
I might need 10 minutes.
Just on the walk with the dog. Oh, wow. The film opens with a shot, top down, of Nicole Kidman leaning her head back as she moans in pure orgasmic bliss as she's having sex with her husband, and they climax at exactly the same time. Her husband played by the gorgeous Antonio Banderas. And she, finishes having sex with her husband, but immediately afterwards takes herself quietly away to the other side of a huge New York apartment and opens up her laptop and watches some pornography and essentially finishes herself off. Watching some porn, which from the far side of the room looks like it's something slightly to do with domination and women being like a slightly subservient role. And it's very clear that the orgasm in inverted commas she had with her husband was not real. And that actually what she needs to finish herself off is something a little bit different than her husband has ever given her. And her husband actually has never been able to satisfy her in that way. And she finishes herself off, and there's a lot of sort of like shame.
I already don't
guilt.
believe that Antonio Banderas could never do that. By the way.
That's the least believable thing of it. He totally
he knows his stuff, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of shame and guilt around this. And she is Romy, who is a very high-powered tech CEO. I'm not exactly clear what the company did. It looked to me like something to do with like packaging and automation, like order. And there's lots of shots of like the top-down warehouse of these grids where robots slide along and put boxes in the right thing.
Okay.
And she is like this high-powered CEO, and on the way in, she has a lot of her things very ordered. She's very well made up. She's got a picture-perfect family. She's got 2 lovely daughters, and they take a beautiful Christmas card next to the tree in gorgeous knitwear, and they're sort of the picture-perfect family. And she's on her way to work one day when a street dog starts barking and attacking someone on the street. And a man on the other side immediately is able to calm that dog, and that man is Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson. And she sort of really like observes the way he seems to command respect from this dog, and later forgets about it. But later that day at work, a new rung of interns is joining their intern mentorship program. And who else is part of this group of interns but Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson? Samuel is a character that immediately seems to have is able to observe what characters seem to want. And it's almost like a mythic idea that he, for some reason, can tell what you want. And they have this sort of one-on-one mentorship program, and they get linked together and have a first awkward meeting. And she asks him, how did you know how to stop that dog? And he's like, I gave it a treat, and that seemed to calm it down. It's like, how did you know it would want a treat? And he says something like, I didn't. Why do you want a treat? And you can tell that certain parts of him is figuring out that what she actually wants in an already inverted power dynamic is to sort of be told what to do. And so we have this complex relationship that is developed between Samuel and Romy. Obviously, it's an affair from her husband, Jacob, played by Antonio Banderas. And we have this film which plays out like an exploration of desire and sex itself. And there are many, many scenes which break down the very minutiae of desire and how power plays work and consent around being dominated and being told what to do, and how that changes desire. And I think the film is sticking out for a couple of reasons. One, because there's a couple of things in play here, in that typically Hollywood either doesn't portray women over 50, let's say, sexually at all, or if it does, it's done in a comedic sense, like, oh, she's a cougar, and it's not a sort of realistic depiction of any women over 50 with a sexual desire. And so that's problematic, in that we don't really have many films about sex itself. We see sex so much in films, but they're actually, once you really start to think about it, we don't break down in its nitty-gritty desire and intimacy and the places that sexual desire can take you in a way that's irresponsible, dangerous, has ramifications for your personal life. And that's what's really interesting about this film, is that it is first and foremost about sex. And I really like how it tackles those things head on. What this film does well is, I think, I could very easily, like, just from that dialogue I spoke to you now, I don't think the dialogue is bad, but in the wrong hands, I think this dialogue could really fall apart. And what this film does well is it does all the most important things right for me. It's got brilliant performances, particularly from Harris Dickinson, but Nicole Kidman gives a performance which is like experienced and effortless. I never saw her acting, in it's like this intangible quality of like great chemistry between actors when they, in lesser hands, some of the scenes and the intimacy and the dialogue and the sexual things, which is quite easy to giggle at, wouldn't have worked. And similarly, her chemistry with Antonio Banderas works really well. For a lot of the film, I'm watching it thinking, God, this is just absolute filth, and like the best way. Like, it's really enticing and very sexy. And I was wondering, are you going to be able to bring this home to make a grander point? And in the last 20 minutes in particular, I thought you've made a really interesting point there about sex and desire. And I'm glad to see that that's come home and isn't just 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
So I was really glad to see that. The score's really brilliant. There's great use of sound design. The cinematography is interesting. There are so many times when the camera is clearly very close to the actor's face, and it uses a really wide open aperture, so like everything kind of falls off to the wayside, like it would when you are being aroused, or when somebody is like the sole focus of yours. If you're really aroused sexually, like all the other details just seem to fall away. And I was really impressed with it. I wouldn't be surprised if some people walked away and said, well, this is really silly. And while I can understand why you'd say that, I think the film wants to be taken seriously. Yeah. It does have something interesting to say about desire and sex, specifically for, in this case, a character who's over, I don't know exactly the age, but who's someone we don't typically get to see sexualized in film. And I'm really glad it made those points. And I'm quite happy to go, no, I think this film is earning its right to indulge in those sexy scenes, and the scenes in particular are just very interesting, like how they touch, who does the first thing. They're also figuring out in some of these scenes, like, well, how do you want to do this, and what do we do to do it? And it was in that last act where I thought, yes, that's interesting. You've earned the right to tell this story. And I hope people do take it seriously and do enjoy it. But also there's quite a lot to enjoy. You just want to go and enjoy it. So yeah, it's a thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. I went to go see it with Talia.
What did you think?
Yeah, we both really enjoyed it. And it's interesting. It's beautifully shot. It's got a great score. Really good small cast. Great performances. Just the important stuff done right.
Yes.
So everything else sort of just snapped into place. So I think it's really good.
Fantastic.
Go and see it.
So that is Babygirl. If you've seen it, let us know your thoughts to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'd love to hear what you think of it, whether you agree with James, disagree with James. I hope to be catching that later this week as well.
Yeah.
And if I've seen it by the time next week, I will give my thoughts as well. Excellent.
It's definitely a case of like they had great chemistry, but if they didn't, the whole film, there's almost a lesson for most films, isn't it? Really, of course, a lesson for most films,
like absolutely, it's got to be 100% committal.
Yes,
commitment.
And even as a 3 with Antonio Banderas as them, I'm like, yes, this scene which could have been really naff has worked, and I'm like, it could have gone wrong. Like, so when I was reading the dialogue out to you, you were almost laughing a little bit because it doesn't quite seem real.
I know, but if it's done with you got to execute it in the right way.
Yeah.
Out of context, you've got to create the context. But in the same way, that's like like anything, any dirty talk or anything like that out of context, it would just sounds completely ridiculous. But then obviously in the context they create. Yeah.
Harris Dickinson is really, you can tell he's loving the detail of every touch, movement, quirk, eye movement. He gets really enjoy every intentional piece of movement, and he does very well with it.
So we've been saying recently that we would have thought Harris Dickinson would make a good Bond to be the next Bond.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like now, because this film's getting a lot of coverage and it's very prestigious, I think that he's just past the point in a way that he doesn't need to be Bond anymore. He's kind of getting all the interesting roles. At some point, he'll need to do a studio movie.
Yes.
But I don't know whether he wants to be bound to the 15-year
He's
commitment.
probably doing quite well staying in A24 land or equivalent.
But that's what I mean. He's like Triangle of Sadness, Babygirl, and
That's why it's quite interesting to see what Mikey Madison does next.
Yes.
If Mikey Madison gets to stay in A24 land, literally in the case of Honora, she gets to be that like go-to girl, versus if she goes studio, will she lose a sort of strand of her quality?
But I think it's actually impossible to be a top list actor and not do a studio property. Like when we did this on Double Take recently, we went through the actors and who was in the top band
Great
and not.
episode of Double Take.
The top band, if we say so ourselves.
Yeah.
In the top band of the 6 actors we mentioned, all of them had done studio properties. Yeah. The only one I can think of who's a major actor, and this was in the second band, is Saoirse Ronan. But that's the last studio movie that Saoirse Ronan did, I would say, is Little Women. That was actually it's still made by a studio, but it's not
considered in the same way. It's not Marvel, is it?
Exactly. So like Paul Mescal did Gladiator 2. Timothy Chalamet does Dune and Wonka. Florence Pugh does Marvel. They all dip. And you need to do that to be able to, first of all, financially back yourself.
Yeah.
But also establish yourself as someone who can straddle both the. Because it's great doing A24 projects, but you can't do them forever, and there's no financially. You need to spread your stability out. So I'm wondering what Harris Dickinson's next big movie will be. You know,
kind of like Clooney was always doing Coen Brothers stuff, but then went and did Oceans and sort of So interesting to watch. Yes.
But do you agree? I'm thinking like he's kind of past that point now of Bond.
I never thought that he'd be likely to play Bond. It's more like he would be an interesting pick for me. I think he'd physically have to change himself, and he'd have to like Bond himself up a bit. But yeah, I don't really know. Apparently James Norton is
I've been hearing that for like 10 years. Honestly, about 10 years. So if it is James Norton, who's a perfectly fine actor, I will be a bit like, okay.
Sure.
A bit feels like reheated news a little bit. But anyway, we're not here to talk
someone
about
I've
Bond.
never seen before.
That's it.
Just give me some
That's what I meant
guy.
about Babygirl, is that Harris Dickinson has established himself enough now.
Yeah.
He's an established name. He's been in enough things now.
Like Daniel Craig had just done Layer Cake with Matthew Vaughn, and it was like he'd kind of...
he'd done a couple of things.
I know he'd done more things. In terms of like the mainstream before.
That was the mainstream,
that's what he'd done that was in the mind's eye. And Layer Cake wasn't this massive commercial success. It was like a great DVD if you purchased it. So it was like he probably had less of an imprint on our eyes that Harris Dickinson has had now. And like most of the other names that people mention, I'm like, these are very established.
Yeah, like Aaron Taylor-Johnson is like, he's already established. And also the thing is now, if they do say Aaron Taylor-Johnson is Bond, I'm kind of like, okay, you kind of killed the news because you sort of said that 6 months ago.
Have you seen the news about the Bond stuff being in turmoil and the whole fights between the Broccolis and Amazon?
That's right, because Amazon owns MGM and obviously MGM owns Bond.
Yeah.
So they're fighting. Yeah. There's rumors that the Broccolis are putting their the foot down.
They want to do like a Moneypenny spin-off series, which sounds like a terrible idea.
That sounds like the worst
idea.
The Marvelization of IP.
Barbara Broccoli said that they're all morons or something. Don't quote me on that. And then they famously, when No Time to Die was ready, but COVID had happened. And everyone it was that Christmas that got cancelled in the UK. And there was this big movement to like put Bond out on a streamer for Christmas, put Bond out on the streamer. And they were like, no, we're going to do a theatrical release. And there was this reticence and this sort of anti-streamer sentiment, which I'm really glad they didn't. Yeah. They did. When did No Time to Die eventually come out? Was it April, May?
No, it was like September, October. It was just after we started. It was our second episode.
Yes,
it was like October 21.
You're right. So they really held on to it.
18 months after it was meant to come out. April 2020 was meant to come out.
Wow. So anyway, just a bit of Bond stuff.
There you go. Let's get on with...
Please write in with your thoughts if you've seen Babygirl and let us know. Hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. We'll read them out on the show.
Let's get on with some emails.